not to harp on about these half steps, but also the accompaniment is filled with these half steps. Here, again, the bass is sinking in half steps, by the way, and the right hand is only giving you half steps. Half steps need to be in this song the most distant and draining possible distance you could be traveling. Originally, Rast was song number 10 out of 12, because Schubert composed the first 12 of Winterreise because he didn't know of the existence of the other poems, and then there was a 6-month period where Winterreise was finished with only 12 songs. And it's hard to know what to do with this information, because of course nobody performs Winterreise with 12 songs. The way that it does affect our interpretation, however, is how Rast is related to Einsamkeit. Because if this is the third to last song, it's really winding down. And somehow Schubert already knows that he only has 2 more swings of the bat before his original song cycle is supposed to end. So when we consider what elements Rast is made of, we have to consider it as some part of Schubert's endgame, him playing his last pieces. And indeed, it does have some strong similarities with Einsamkeit, namely that the bass note is an ostinato. Voice it a little bit stronger to the bass to bring the point out. We always have this. And in Einsamkeit we have, it's the same note, incidentally. In the middle voice edition it's transposed to the same key, but in the original keys they're not the same. And where else do we famously have an ostinato bass? It's clear that Schubert has in mind that Winterreise, if it's 12 songs or 24 songs, needs to end in a certain kind of stasis, a certain kind of Rast, if you will. But certain kind is the important part. What is the contour of the vocal line? Half step. Again, I want to stress that I don't think Schubert is making a strong connection between all these half steps. It's more from an outside perspective. Simply, what are the ingredients that are in this stew? Because it's not a different recipe every song. It's all different flavors from the same stew. What's crazy about this half step in the beginning of Rast for me is not just that it's a half step, but actually only now do I realize that I have stopped to lay myself down how tired I am. And the left hand is also rising in a half step. Right, so things are moving by the smallest interval possible, but he's carrying the weight of the world. At least he feels like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, even though he's only moving by half steps. This is how tired he is. Once again, longtime listeners will recognize 5 of 4. And it gets even better because it's a major 4. Also known as, nobody really, 5 of 7 is not a thing. That being said, it's more of a thing in minor keys than it is in major keys. But we carry on, and the major deceives us. It's not a functional major. Again, major, not a functional major. Just a passing vision. And these half steps are so important because later on we have octaves and we have giant intervals, like sixths and diminished sevenths. In the earlier songs, there's more of a fluid transition between the poles and the extremes of the emotional landscape. And as Winterreise goes on, there's really a tearing apart that happens where we go violently from one extreme to the other. And I think that's symbolic, first of all, of his psychological state, but also of his physical tiredness, where you keep telling yourself one more effort, and then you collapse. And then you gather your strength, one more effort, and then you collapse. Here again we have a poem that's all in iams. Nun merk ich erst, wie müde ich bin, da ich zur Ruh mich lege. And for me it has almost like a lullaby effect, even though in the second half of the song it gets very nasty. Fühlst in dir still ist deinen Wohl.